Continuing with the next topic, and namely maturity of AI. And the next topic will be about how to develop transformation models using maturity assessment. And I would like to invite on stage now Mr. Philipp Hartmann. He is a director of AI strategy at AppliedAI. And prior to joining AppliedAI, he spent 4 years at McKinsey Company as a strategy consultant. And he holds a PhD from Technical University in Munich, where he investigated factors of competitive advantage in artificial intelligence. And he will be joined on the stage by Hoffmann, who will give his part of this talk later. And Hoffmann is a senior manager of data and AI at EnBW. And in this role, he leads companies' activities in AI at enterprise level. So the stage is yours. Very happy to have you both here.
Yeah, many thanks for the introduction and also warm welcome from my side. So we just heard a lot about how to scale AI, and also in the talks this morning, I think we heard a lot about the challenges that I guess all of you are well aware of, how to bring AI into application. Now the interesting question is, okay, what to do about it? It's kind of having the problems is good, but the question is kind of how to overcome those problems. And that's something I would like to share with you in the next 10-15 minutes, together with Rainer from EnBW, to give you some thoughts on how we approach it and how to overcome it. Yeah, so as said, my name is Philipp Hartmann. I'm the director of AI strategy at AppliedAI. If you haven't heard of AppliedAI, what are we doing? We're basically helping companies, well, as the name suggests, to bring AI into application. We work with some larger companies, companies like Infineon. Is Nico? No, he's not here. Infineon, Linde, for example, EnBW, Siemens, Deutsche Telekom. So quite a range of larger companies, also some larger medium-sized companies. And we really tackle the topic of AI holistically from strategy to really implementing AI cases. As I said, today with me is Hoffmann from EnBW, who will later share how they use this maturity assessment. Now, why should you care about this topic of AI maturity? As I said, I mean, we heard the number quite a number of times today. 80% of AI projects fail or whatever. We heard the challenges. I think Sebastian Werner this morning gave a good introduction on all the challenges and things you need to approach. Now the thing is, it's not that AI itself is not valuable, or that that this 80% is kind of equally distributed and kind of all projects are failing and some are going well. In fact, there are quite some companies that make massive money out of AI. It's also no secret here. I mean, if you think about companies like Google or Amazon or Uber, where really AI is by now at the core of their business model. And also if you think about Google, by now kind of all Google products, be it search, be it maps, be it kind of smartphones, they're all powered by AI. And certainly those companies manage to really use AI in a way to create value. Now, and as I said, we heard this quite a couple of times this morning already. There are many other companies, and this picture you see here, this is actually what DALL-E made out of the prompt of a box full of failed AI projects. You can interpret it. I'm always also fascinated by the language. I don't know what this stands for. That's kind of the DALL-E own language, but that's a different topic. So we see this massive gap. On the one hand, there are those companies, that really create value from AI, and many others that have the challenge for different reasons. Now, where does this gap come from? Essentially, it's about the question of reaching a certain level of maturity. So only when you reach a certain level of maturity, you're able to capture value from AI. And those companies that I mentioned earlier, these are certainly those companies that started quite early with applying AI. I mean, even those companies, it's not that they were kind of born with AI. It's quite interesting if you look at Google, for example, how they approached machine translation. They also had more or less traditional approaches. And only when they kind of tried out AI approaches, they understood that using AI or using machine learning there yields better results. And over time, they had to implement it. But for them, it was also an uphill battle. So there's something that Florian Schaudel mentioned earlier, this uphill battle. Don't assume that in these companies it was easy at this time to implement AI. I mean, certainly it's easier if you're a digital company and you have the data available and you have kind of thousands of software engineers compared to your kind of mechanical engineering company. That's true. But even though for those companies, getting to this point was an uphill battle. But they went this way, and then they reached a certain level of AI maturity. And to reach this level of AI maturity, we typically differentiate kind of 4 different levels from not started. This morning I saw the numbers from Bitkom. I was a bit shocked. So only 9% of the German companies, I mean, also smaller companies, but only 9% of the companies started with AI at all in Germany. So that's always a shocking number already. But then if you come to experimenter, and I don't have to explain this to you, we discussed it, it's not a linear process, right? It's not if you do one POC, one use case, and you do 2 use cases that you can scale your approach. And we talked about scaling AI for the last 45 minutes, so I don't want to go into details here. But you really need to reach a certain level of maturity, and it's typically this kind of professional level, where you bring your use cases not only kind of from POC into production, but really across the company. And only if you reach this level, and unfortunately there are not that many companies in Germany that are at this point yet, you're able to create value from AI. Now, what are the topics you need to address to reach maturity? And once again, I mean, we heard all of those topics before. Earlier, Sarah Engel mentioned the different aspects. It's actually a similar picture here. Reaching AI maturity requires to really kind of start with something what we call the AI ambition. So kind of your North Star, like where you want to go with AI. If you don't answer this question, whatever you do is not, well, you will not be able to go somewhere because you don't know where you want to go to. Then it's about finding the right use cases. We just heard it, kind of the question of bringing domain experts and data experts together. Then it's also about, and we heard this before, all those enabling factors from the kind of technical foundations, data foundations, but we also heard this before in the discussion a couple of times. It's also about the right culture, creating trust into your AI applications. So you need to worry about all those dimensions, and only if you worry about all those dimensions, you're able to create AI maturity and eventually create value from AI. Now the problem is you need to develop those dimensions evenly. But this is typically not what happens in companies. So typically there's kind of one initiative being pushed. Could be something like, okay, infrastructure. Hey, we need a data platform, or we need a high-performance computing cluster. Or it's talent. Hey, we need to hire, 100 data scientists. And I know those cases. You might also know, or I hope you are not one of those persons. But there's those stories from companies where kind of maybe not 100, but 10 PhD data scientists were hired. Then the people came, say, hey, I wanted to create my model, but there was no data, there were no use cases, and no one was waiting for them, and suddenly, no one was having fun, and certainly no one created value. So what you need to do as a company is really to develop those dimensions evenly, and this is really kind of understanding where you stand and understand what you need to do in all of those dimensions. And in order to support this, we developed this maturity assessment. So what is it? It's essentially it's a survey. It's an online survey, quite detailed. So overall, it's some 100 items across those 9 different dimensions. And with this survey, you can get a clear picture where you stand across those different dimensions. And with this clear understanding, you can really have a good and data-driven discussion how to move on and how to derive the right initiatives. Now, the good thing is we are as AppliedAI, we're providing this for free. So you can go to our website and kind of use it for free for your company. It's also something we kind of jointly developed with Bitkom and BD. So feel free to use it. And when you use it, what you get out of it is like a detailed report where you see across the different dimensions where you stand. And the interesting thing is also if you do it a bit more kind of sophisticated, it's not about asking just one group or some people, but it's really about asking the different stakeholders group within the company. So what you see here, I don't know if you can see it from the back, but we differentiate the different groups. So the different dots here, the different colors are the different groups. And this is kind of typical result, where, for example, your AI team says, hey, yes, we have an AI vision defined. Yeah, we know what to do. But if you ask the other stakeholder groups in your companies, they say, hey, we don't know it, we don't care, I don't know. And this kind of deviation between groups you can see here. And based on these results, you can derive an action plan. So that's typically what we do with the companies to then kind of bring the relevant stakeholders together and derive the right initiatives to push AI maturity in a structured way. And how this looks into practice, I'd like to invite Rainer to the stage, one of our partners to present how they're doing it.
Thanks for the 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Okay, after Philipp has given an overview of how the assessment works and what the complexity of maturity, AI maturity is, I will go into details and tell you how we use the tool and how we generated insights from it. Next one. So we used the assessment, we did the assessment 2.5 years ago for the first time, back then with 30 participants, and we did it again early this year with approximately 100 participants, and I think that's not too bad compared to other partners, right, Philipp? What do we do here? Oh, by the way, we didn't use the free tool. We have a more sophisticated version because we're a partner of AppliedAI, because we did it in a little slightly different way. First of all, regarding the participants, we differentiated between 3 different roles. We looked at data-related roles like data scientists, data engineers, data analysts. Then we looked at domain experts and at managers. Right? Did we do that? We wanted to find out, do they have a different view on our maturity level and on the statements that are covered by the tool? Further, we differentiated the participants between 9 different groups. We have 4 business units, and then we took the 5 largest functional units because we wanted to know, do we have differences in the maturity level of those business units? That was, again, very interesting. And I will show you in a bit what the result is. And there's one requirement regarding the participants, that is, although the non-technical participants, they need to have at least contact with analytical, with AI projects, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to answer these 109 questions. And that explains why we only had 30 participants 2.5 years ago. And I would like to go into one specific detail and show you how we really use the MIT. This is one statement out of the 109 statements covered by the survey. And it says, we monitor use case specific KPIs to assess the performance and value creation of AI projects. And you can put in your answer ranging from strongly disagree up to strongly agree. And what we see here is that the data-related roles rather agree, and the domain experts rather disagree, and management is kind of undecided. So now you start interpreting these results. We did it together with AppliedAI, but you need to do it internally, first of all. And our conclusion here was, okay, there seems to be no common understanding of how to evaluate project performance. Maybe data-related roles have their own KPIs, and the domain experts don't know about their KPIs. Maybe they need different KPIs, so you should start a conversation. Should we have a common understanding? How do we actually measure project performance? And another insight here is, does management even know about this topic? Do they care? Because either you know about KPIs or you don't, but being undecided is kind of weird. So you should start a conversation. Do you need KPIs? Is it something that you actually care about? So that's just one example how we use it, and you do it for 109 elements, statements. You pick those that are most relevant to your company. And that's one of the major benefits of the whole maturity assessment, which I mentioned here, the third point, that it stimulates a very structured internal discussion. Other benefits is, of course, you identify blind spots. You know, maybe there is a topic that isn't covered by on your AI roadmap, but by means of the survey, the assessment, your organization tells you, hey, we have an issue here. And further, another benefit is that, as Philipp mentioned, you have those several dimensions. If your maturity level is different in these dimensions, it helps you to prioritize. For example, you might be doing very well in terms of data, it's one dimension, but you might be ahead in the dimension culture. So you know where to focus on for the next year. And lastly, I want to talk about how do we use these results. Philipp showed this very nice slide of the 4 different levels, plus level 0. That's really a very convenient way to communicate where you are on your AI journey. Scale from 0 to 4, and you can communicate to your management, we are at level 2, moving towards level 3. And by the way, I can agree, it's not a linear process. It's terrible moving from 2 to 3. It's just a very easy way to communicate where you are and what your ambition is. A second is, you can use some of these results to really build up an argument. Let's say the maturity assessment tells you people are having a hard time integrating analytical solutions into the IT landscape. Then you have kind of a proof, can use this statement, can approach the head of IT and tell them, look at this, the organization tells us we have an issue here, we should talk about this. So you can really use it as an argument. And the last point, which is kind of a nice one, is because we looked at different business units, if you have a gap between, or difference between those business units, that might create some peer pressure, because business units don't want to see that another business unit is ahead of them. So that's another advantage, that it might create some peer pressure. Okay. Philipp, I'm not sure if you want to talk about this slide again. Perfect. In this case, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks from my side.
Time left for 1 or maybe 2 very quick questions.
Very good.
Does anyone wants to ask something?
Keeping the pressure high.
Not the case. All right, then thanks again very much. And we then continue with, thank you.